Well, hello everyone, Texie88 here and welcome to another review. And now we're taking a look at Super Soccer for the ZX Spectrum, released by Imagine Software in 1986. This was an early attempt to bring a simulation aspect to football, and 2 years earlier there was the game Match Day, which got released, and for a while that was intended to be seen as the crowning glory of some football games on the Spectrum. So let's see what this has to offer. Some slightly discordant 48k beeper tune. Yeah. Yeah, GF Dickey might want to get your hearing checked out because some of those notes they're a little off. And enough of that. So you got different game modes. You got tournament, practice, single game. And you got some different match times. You can have 10-minute, 20-minute, or 30-minute. You can choose the colours. So you can choose the border, pitch. I'll keep the pitches green. Actually, no. Yeah, it's not unusual to get color variation, things like this for the Spectrum, as it's one of the ways to try and minimise on color clash. So we'll edit names. You can edit the team names, so you can change them to your favourite or least favourite, depending on how you look at it. Feces United. Yeah, I'm just mucking about here. Players. Obviously, if you have more than 2 players, it'll only let you play tournament. That's why it changed to tournament down there. So I'm just going to switch it back to single game. So let's start. Define keys. Left, right, up, down, kick. Now, the way this game works is markedly different. It's not arcade style like Match Day. It uses a simulation aspect and uses a kicking power technique, and each player has their own speed and energy. It has their own energy meter, and if you run around with a player like a blue ass fly, then that man's going to get tired very quickly. So you need to be very choosy. Now I'm in the players in red, and the player I'm controlling has a halo above his head. The ball does not stick to your feet in this, and the faster you go, the faster you're running, the further ahead And this game does actually have aftertouch in it. Oh, Dom. Unfortunately, I was trying to kick, but I ended up fouling that player. This could be the first football game in which you can do sliding tackles and inadvertently foul people. And this is where I get to position all of my team members. And you just press enter when you've finished. Well, that was a bit of a pathetic kick, mate. So, and you can actually manually change the player in control of within reason. And this game also does have diving headers and jumping headers and the ability to chest the ball down, but it'll only do that kind of thing if the computer believes the state of play suggests that he should. For example, you're not going to do a jumping header or diving header if the ball's just dribbling along the ground, because that would make no sense. Oh, darn it. And also, because it's not an arcadey thing, you can't just suddenly change direction and expect to be going at full pelt. So you actually have to gradually turn like you would in real life, to within reason. Obviously, it's having to do all that within the limitations of low RAM capacity of 8-bit machines. And the goalkeepers have their own unique controls unless you run forward with them, in which case they behave like a normal player. I'm just going to hoof it off to them because they're getting a bit too close to the... You do have to look at the instruction manual to understand how the controls work, otherwise you're not going to have a clue what's going on. The players in my team are represented by crosses, and the boxes are the opponent's team. You can do this at any not a huge amount of atmosphere, but you've got to bear in mind this is a Spectrum and the 48K Spectrum of that, so the sound is going to be a bit limited. I mean, that might have been possible to have a white noise style sound for a crowd in 128K Spectrum football games, but this game pretty much predated the ZX Spectrum, especially here in the United Kingdom, where it wasn't actually released until the same. And you can also add aftertouch to the ball, and you can also do different kinds of kicks like chips and slices and lobs and that kind of thing. To do that, as you're approaching the ball, you just hold down a very specific direction as your player's running towards it. It sounds more complicated than it really is. Once you've actually got the hang of it, it actually isn't too bad. And it could be that this game set the standard for a lot of what's in football games nowadays. As in, whenever there's tackling going on, there is the inevitable colour clash. For some reason, my player decided to do a sliding tackle. That wasn't ideal, and he's lucky he didn't foul. And in case you're wondering, yes, you can get yellow and red cards in this, and once a player's got a red card, that player does not return. See, there's the form. Oh god, I just fouled that player. Or more likely, just... So I've got to place my men again. Yeah. I'll keep the goal. Yeah, I'm happy with all these players where they are. Sometimes it's a bit hard to come out of the place kicking positioning thing. Sometimes pressing the return doesn't seem to want to work. I don't quite know why that is, unless... See, I built it up and forced me to kick it way away from me. At least it's not 2-frame animation for the players. Bloody hell, mate, you were lucky you didn't foul me. Oh, God alive. Come on, let's proceed with the game. Right, tackled him, completely lost the ball. Right, second half. Now it's the opposing team is going to be doing the kickoff. Yeah, as I said, this is one of the games that you really have to work on in order to understand the controls. I get the feeling that at the time there was no other football game, particularly on 8-bit computers, that had the level of depth that this is trying to achieve. However, I am not entirely oblivious to its most glaring fault. Well, two really. One is that some of the controls are not as responsive as they perhaps really needed to be in order for it to work efficiently. And the other far more serious problem, you can probably guess, Joe, just by what you've witnessed in this review, the whole pace of the game is just far too slow. I mean, this really needed to be a lot faster in order to get any great enjoyment out of it. I mean, it's good that they managed to get a kind of a simulation aspect to it, but it's questionable whether the machines of the time were really able to cope with that level of depth. And the scrolling isn't exactly the smoothest in the world either. I'm going to hoof this. I didn't get enough of a run up to be able to hoof it, so. What? You dink, move. Ugh. As I said, you have to gradually turn players around. You can't just suddenly go left and then right, a bit like an arcade game like Match Day 2. That won't work here. I mean, at times the graphics do get a bit messy, not just with colour clash, but also just generally they just. The goalkeeper's coming. Yay, I've scored. See, look, my players are jumping about in joy. So Feces United is currently a 1 goal ahead. Yeah, if the truth be told, even though this game's pretty revolutionary, it still doesn't alter the fact that it's too slow to be particularly enjoyable. So it's definitely not going to get a whopping great big score when I come to do my final verdict. It's a shame because this could well be the first football game to contain a lot of the things like aftertouch and different yeah, I was trying to do a chip there, but some. No, I was trying to do it and get a bit of aftertouch, so I sort of kicked it at a slight angle, but it didn't quite work out that way. So throw in. So you've got separate animations for throw-ins, and as you saw, separate animations for the players jumping around in adulation whenever any of their team members scored a goal. Oh, missed. What did you do that for, you absolute dinkler? Yeah, I wouldn't say that the CPU-controlled opponent was a particularly stiff challenge either. Oh, this is going to be interesting. There's... Get over here! Oops. I think that was a foul throw. Well, there was bloody no one near me. And it won't let you get within too close to the site of the free kick, which is consistent with the rules of football. So don't even bother trying to move your players close to the ball, because it's obviously not going to let you. See, look, as I said, the CPU opponents aren't exactly the sharpest tools in the shed. I mean, that guy just hoofed it off, even though he could have just... He's building up my force meter by holding down the... Yeah, there's that force meter that shows up, and that's done by holding down the fire button. Same thing works for kicks, although you actually build up the kick power as you're approaching the ball. Oh, darn it. Ah, oh, missed. It's a little bit messy. Oh, so close. There's not much time left of the match, so it'll soon be time for me to deliver my final verdict. And again, he just hoofs it off for no apparent reason. Build up the meter and then release, and then... Oh, God. Oh, and another time, so whenever there's another age-old problem, sometimes whenever there are multiple players of yours at the same distance apart from the ball, it sometimes gets its knickers in a twist and causes you to take control of the wrong player, and you end up moving that player in completely the wrong direction, which isn't ideal. But either way, I've won this match. So that's Super Soccer for the ZX Spectrum, released by Imagine Software in 1986. It's an attempt to bring some form of simulation to football games, and I believe it could even be the first one to contain things like energy bars for the players and have a simulation aspect, and have things like chips, slices, lobs, and after touch, and even have sliding tackles, jumping headers, diving headers, and fouls, and red and yellow and the associated red and yellow cards. However, as I said, this isn't going to get a sterling review, no chance. Graphics, well, they look like players, and at least it's not two-frame animation. However, the way they move isn't exactly smooth, and nor is the scrolling. In fact, the scrolling's a little bit jerky, which for a ZX Spectrum is particularly embarrassing. Usual expected colour clash issues whenever tackling goes on, or whether there's a whole bunch of players, and whenever that does happen, the graphics can sometimes degenerate into a bit of a mess and make it a bit hard to make out what's going on. Sound very minimal, just got bounces of balls and whistle effects and so forth. Apart from that, there's nothing. But it is a 48K Spectrum, so maybe we shouldn't expect too much. But I have heard more sound in something like, say, Match Day, and the comparative lack of sound in this does impact on the overall atmosphere of the game. Gameplay. It is one of those in which you really need to look at the manual and you really need to get some practice in as to how the controls work. This isn't just a pick up and play game. But the problem is, would you really want to put in that kind of effort, given that it has some rather unresponsive controls, and the controls don't always work as well as you'd like them to. Like when you're trying to do a bit of after touch on a kick and you suddenly end up changing direction because of the kind of things you have to do in order to instruct the player to do a particular kind of kick, like a chip or a slice or a lob or whatever. But the biggest problem with the game is that everything just runs at such a snail's pace that it really robs the game of any level of excitement that could have made it worthwhile. And it cost £7.95 when it first came out, and that would have been quite a lot of money for a child in 1986. And I get the feeling that that the Commodore 64 and Amstrad CPC versions would have cost even more. So yeah, even though it's revolutionary, it's still a pretty bad football game. So I'm going to have to give Super Soccer on the Spectrum 3 out of 10. The only reason it's not harsher is because of the kind of things it brought to the table, and which would later become staples of football games, which are even to a certain extent used in modern games like Pro Evolution Soccer and FIFA, and things like fouls and all the different kinds of after of touch effects that you can do on the ball, and so and to each player having his own, and in later cases her own unique energy bars and the like, and sliding tackles, fouls, and that kind of thing. So what it brings to the table is pretty revolutionary, but as a game, it fails miserably, and it really is a shame. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that review nonetheless, and I hope to catch you on another video soon. Texie88 out.